7:01 p.m. And first thing we have is a presentation from Mike Ditchens regarding the customer service.
Excellent, excellent.
The floor is yours.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. Lots of familiar faces. Thank you for having us back. And first and foremost, thank you for your continued business. We've been working with SELCO on surveys dating back to the late 90s. So it's been a long-standing relationship, and we very much appreciate it. So what we're going to do tonight is give you just a kind of a quick overview. We've allocated about 30 minutes to take you through the slides, and there's two different studies here. So we have the electric and the cable. Historically, just to give you a little bit of background, we've done these questions together in one survey instrument, and from time to time that had the potential to create a little bit of confusion for customers. Which utility am I answering on behalf of right now? Am I answering on behalf of electric or cable? So this particular calendar year, we made the decision to go ahead and split them out. So they're two separate studies. So I'll take you briefly through them and give you a quick high level over what we're looking to do. So for those of you unfamiliar with Great Blue Research, we've been conducting market research since 1979. We've worked in the utility space every one of those years, and really kind of our goal is to help folks make decisions and use the data to make adjustments and improvements to their service. We do it through a variety of different methodologies, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth. But all the work that we do is custom to the needs that you all have, so we work with Mike and Jackie and others internally to develop the survey questions. We're not just saying, here's what you're going to ask. We actually work with you to figure out what you want to ask, what decisions you need to make, and what you have going on. So I'll start by going through on the electric side. This was a dual methodology, which meant that we used two different methodologies to collect our data. We captured phone surveys, so from a random sampling, we receive your customer records, phone numbers, and emails, and we reach out to them in a random fashion. So we incorporate both online and cell phones. We don't provide any incentives, so we just let folks know who we are, why we're calling, and that we're just calling to collect their opinions on the utility. We're not trying to sell them anything. There was a grand total of 66 questions. I'm not going to give you the answers to all of them. We were really covering the high level. And not all 66 questions get asked to every single participant. There's skip patterns built in. So for example, if you had an interaction with a customer service or field service rep, we go on to ask you how well that interaction went. If you didn't, we skip over those questions and move on. So very statistically reliable. We also sent an email survey out to email addresses on file. We had 187 completes to that survey. I'll walk you through as we go through some of the differences that you have a tendency to see. One thing to keep in mind, when you get a phone survey, the traditional bell curve applies, whereas because we're making the calls outbound and randomizing that sample, we have a tendency to get a good mix of the folks that we speak to. Some happy folks on one end, some not so happy folks on the other, but then you get a nice balance in between. On the online, these are folks that are more self-selective. The last time you all answered an email survey, probably because you were really excited about that topic or really happy with that representative that you dealt with, or not so happy. So you have a tendency to get more of the folks on either end of that bell curve in the online. So you'll see some differences. In this data, we combine them as well as showed them separately because some marketing and the way that you speak to those customers, you might take some different approaches based on that. So we made all of our phone calls in this particular case between October 26th and September 20th. On the electric side, the phone calls themselves were probably completed over 2 or 3 days at most, but the online we leave open and give folks the opportunity to answer those surveys. So we usually leave the online a little bit longer. So as I've said to you in the past, when we're creating the survey instrument with you all, there's a number of different things that we want to capture. So the first thing that, in terms of the electric side, we wanted to rate SELCO on their electric service, interactions with office personnel, awareness and importance of community ownership, your municipal electric structure. It's really, really important because nationally, when folks have a knowledge that you're municipally owned, they have a tendency to think better about you afterwards. So we want to really promote that ownership structure. How folks want to communicate with you and how they want to receive communication from you, evaluation of SELCO's efforts to curb carbon emissions, interest in and concerns regarding electric vehicles. So folks in your service territory, are they interested in EVs? What are their barriers to participation? Those sorts of things. Awareness of and interest in time of use rates, and then last but not least, demographic profiles of respondents. So afterwards, if we want to slice and dice the data a little bit, we have the opportunity to do so. So from a key study findings, when we get into the electric side, and I'll kind of share with you some of the correlations for what we see. We conduct this type of research all over the country with both investor-owned as well as municipal electric utilities, so we can give you some context of where you all kind of fall in the spectrum. And generally speaking, we can get into these company ratings, if you will, such things as reliable service, honesty and integrity, rates, helpful and knowledgeable staff, community service, helping customers conserve electricity. Generally what we want to see is mid to high 80s and low 90s for these ratings is kind of a general rule of thumb. You'll see at the bottom of the second column from the right, 93.3% positive from the phone folks, 91% positive from the online folks. So these ratings are great. When I'm doing surveys like this for investor owns, those numbers are typically in the 70s. When I'm talking about rates with investor owns, where you're at 89 and 90.3% respectively, investor owned utilities are seeing 30s and 40s for those numbers and rates. So 89 and 90% respectively means that it's not always just about the dollar amount, it's about the value that they're receiving for the cost that they pay. So there's a good relationship between your customers and your utility. Those are great numbers. So when we see those, when we get into cable, we expect them to be a little bit lower, and they are, but they're not bad by any stretch. There's just different expectations in terms of a cable service, which is a little bit more of a luxury or that sort of product, as opposed to something that you absolutely can't live without. So really good numbers right there. Moving on, it's important to understand whether you are actually lower than your surrounding towns or you're higher. This gets into this particular case is just asking your customers whether they believe your rates are higher, lower, or about the same as surrounding towns. And you see there's a mix there, right? Not everyone knows, and we might think it's common knowledge. You all who are close to this information know where you fall on that spectrum, but you can see the orange bar there of the online folks on the far right, 29.4% are unsure of where your rates fall. And I always say this, if your rates are lower, obviously you want to promote that in relationship to your reliability in the services. If your rates are higher, you want to let them know why. So this is not we only want to share this news when it's in our favor, because the reality is if you're higher but you're providing great service for them, they're already saying you are doing a good job in the rates category. So it's about explaining and them understanding where the money is going from those rates that they're paying. First contact resolution, probably one of the two most important questions in the survey. When we talk about first contact resolution, there's a strong correlation to when I call my utility, how many times I have to speak with them before my question or my need is resolved. First contact resolution is really, really important. You all are doing a tremendous job right there. I don't always see high 80s and 90s for this first contact resolution. Generally speaking, I see lots of high 60s and 70s for this. And it doesn't mean that when I call customer service, I hang up the phone and whatever issue I have going on at home is resolved. It might mean that a truck needs to get rolled to my house and somebody needs to come and fix something at my home or my business. First contact resolution can still apply there. What that means is the customer service representative that I spoke to explained to me super clearly, here's what's going to happen. We're going to have to send a truck out. It will typically be within X number of days or hours or what have you. We'll call you to schedule that appointment. Most of the time, it's really just, I don't want to have to call back. When customers have to call back to get a status report or an update, that's when you've missed out on the first contact resolution. But if you're reaching out to them proactively and keeping them in the loop, that's where the first contact resolution comes into play. So very strong numbers here. 90% said SELCO takes care of things the first time. They don't have to have that repeat contact. 81.3 reported the same on online. So that could have been a scenario where they tried to have some interactions online. It didn't go the way that they wanted, which is where some of those numbers could be a little bit lower. But overall, very, very strong numbers across the board on the first contact resolution. This is something that's important to keep track and tabs of. The other thing that we saw too is as I mentioned earlier in that kind of that opening slide about the importance of being a community-owned municipal utility. And we saw 89.9% of online and 80% of folks on phones said it was important to them. And again, it's because they know you. It's because they live in the same town with many of the folks that work in this utility. It's their neighbors that are putting the lights back on and those sorts of things. So folks want to have that local ownership, so promoting that only works in your favor. Strong relationships. I said there was two most important slides. The first one was that first contact resolution. This is the second one. So we see that net positive score of 96.3%, which is the cumulative total of advocate, loyal, and satisfied. And to explain that a little bit, when we saw that 93.3% positive average rating of those characteristics on that first slide with the table, we know that folks are happy. So we want to kind of break down to what level of happiness they exist. And your advocates and your loyal folks, to put it into context, are during an outage, if somebody might be complaining online or in social media about their power being out, it's your advocate and your loyal folks that are defending you online and social media, saying, hey, give them a break, it's dangerous out there. These are the folks that are also, if you're launching a new product or a service, that are first in line. To give you some perspective, the advocates and loyals, when you combine them, generally speaking, work out to be about 25% in most customers that we're seeing. As you can see, in the phone in the yellow, 22.8 plus 9.3 gets you over 30%, and when you look at the online folks, you're at almost 62%. So the number of folks who are reporting to be advocate or loyal customers of yours are big numbers. So these are very good numbers. 93.6 net positive score for the online, so both mid to high 90s on both the online and the phone. So a really good relationship. These are folks that you've communicated with, you've been honest and transparent with, they trust you, they believe you're doing the right thing. On this particular slide, we wanted to talk about and have them rank a couple of different scenarios. We wanted to understand from customers what's most important to them, whether it's reliability, whether it's cost of electricity, whether it's reduction of carbon in the electricity portfolio. So we asked them to rank, and how it played out is that reliability came out to be the most important. 49.7 and 56.7 respectively was their first choice when we asked them to rank those three characteristics. Cost of electricity came in second. Many times when I tell you about the 30s and the 40s on the rates category, cost of electricity comes up first in this ranking scenario. So it's not so much about cost for your customers as much it is reliability. This is what's most important to them. And then the reduction of the carbon in the electricity portfolio, still important, but came in much lower in terms of the ranking scenario. So this is just how folks are saying what's important. It doesn't mean that any one is not important. It's just as they rank them, it falls into three categories there. Uncertainty surrounding carbon emission actions. We asked folks how aggressive they would like SELCO to be with respect to setting goals to reduce carbon emissions, considering that more aggressive measures typically result in higher costs. What we want to do with any new product or new service, as we gauge the interest, we then want to start to gauge the interest a little further if they understand that there's a cost associated with it. And we still see about 50% on the phone and 43% on the online. Still would like SELCO to be very aggressive or somewhat aggressive, but I think it's important to point out that over half of folks feel that SELCO is doing enough to curb carbon emissions currently. So again, there's that trust that you're going to do the right thing, and they trust you to follow through. There is still a number of folks that fall into that unsure category, but overall, about half want you to be aggressive and half say that you're doing a great job in that area. Some considering electric vehicle purchase. You'll see down at that bottom chart, it says National PPDS. This is a product, an online subscription product that Great Blue built with the American Public Power Association. So we survey folks nationally online about different topics related to public power, and we see in the national data, I want to give you some comparison, about 35.7% of folks that we speak to who are being served by public power are considering the purchase of an electric vehicle in the near future, over the next 3 years. And we see that about 23 or 20% respectively in your community are also considering that. So if there is rebates and programs and incentives and learning opportunities for your customers, their biggest concerns, as it is the case with folks all over the country, is distance to charge and limited range, as well as the higher initial cost to purchase. So in those areas where there's state or local incentives or rebates available, that goes a long way in helping folks also understand where the charging systems are. When we first started asking these questions a number of years ago, all of these barriers were much larger than they are today. So naturally, as the ecosystem of these chargers becomes larger and larger and they're easier to find, a lot of the barriers are reducing. Customers uncertain to shift to time of use. I've been studying time of use rates since probably 2001, and there's a couple of general consensus type scenarios that go along with time of use. Most folks understand the concept of what it means. Cost of electricity during peak times is more expensive than off-peak times. Folks understand that concept. They were delivered that concept in the initial versions of cell phones, so this is not a concept that's unfamiliar to folks. Where it gets tricky is, how do I know if my lifestyle fits within this type of program? Where we've seen the greatest success, and you have 2/5 to over half of folks saying that they would be likely to shift their rate structure, they just want to understand and know that it makes sense for them. Where I've seen these programs be successful is where the utility had the ability to run that program and say, on the time of use rate, you would have saved 20% off of your historical bill last month. So there's a try before you buy. Or, hey, it looks like based on your usage and lifestyle, you'd actually pay a little bit more. It's probably not a great program for you. So that ability to kind of see if it fits for us, and then if down the road it's not working, having that ability to shift back. But what we do find is when folks have that opportunity to do that analysis and see if it works out for them, they are very likely to switch and take advantage. Now, of course, there's metering and all sorts of things that go into that, but from a standpoint of the public being likely and understanding it and taking advantage, that kind of understanding before they switch goes a long way. So that being said, I was going to save questions for the end unless folks have a quick question on the electric side now. If not, I can jump right into the cable. So far, so good? All right. So we'll take you through the cable. What you're going to see on this first slide is very similar to what you saw on the electric slide. Isn't that the song, the electric slide? Yeah. I won't do it, I promise. 302 phone completes, 186 online completes, so very similar sample sizes with both the electric and the cable as well. So a few fewer questions in this survey instrument, same deal. We made our calls and collected our online data from November 12th to December 4th. It's always important to understand if there was an outage or something big in the news during that time. These are snapshot in time results, so if anything was going on, it might jump up. There was nothing that comes to mind, but I always remind folks. So similar to what you see on the electric side, rating area organizations, rating cable service from SELCO, interactions with office and field service personnel. We also wanted to get some opinions and attitudes on different services, what types of streaming services and networks they're utilizing, the importance that they place on internet speeds, interest in streaming services over cable TV, and again, demographic profiles of respondents. So, as I mentioned earlier, you'll start to see a little bit lower ratings here. Mid to high 80s and low 90s are still the goal. And if you take a look at that 2019 phone without Don't Knows, 84.6% positive average overall rating. So this is very good. We work with a lot of investor-owned utilities on the cable side. And again, 60s and 70s is what we're seeing on the averages there. So part of this is the great work that SELCO is doing on this side. The other part of this is that, again, municipally owned local company providing this service to me. Rates for cable service, I've yet to see anybody that loves rates for cable service, no matter what provider that they have, but 68.9% can be in some education, also helping them understand how the rates are calculated. This may be one of those battles that you never win, but education on rates always goes a long way. It is always the lowest characteristic rating, so you are not alone in that category. But when you get into the service offerings, the quality and reliability of the service, communication with customers, helpful and knowledgeable staff, there's only that one rating in the 60s. Everything else is in the 80s and 90s. So from a service capacity standpoint, doing a really, really good job there.
Can I just ask on that, for the rates question, how does that compare to other providers?
So for the Coxes and the Frontiers and the Comcast that we do this same type of work on, where we see investor owns on the electric side in the 30s and 40s, it's more 40s, 50s. For those on the municipal side, it can be all over the place. I don't typically see it too high, not like you do in the 80s for the electric. So this is, I would say, probably middle to upper middle of the road in terms of what we're seeing on a regular basis. Satisfied with the current cable package? We asked folks over the past year, have you perceived any differences in the overall quality of service provided by SELCO Cable? And you see the large number of folks in that improved or remains good category. Online folks gave us a little bit more in the remains poor or area, as you see in that kind of third grouping. Again, just a reminder, these folks online are going to take that opportunity to provide a little bit more of what they're displeased with or pleased with. So that was one area where it jumped out. But overall, kind of across the board, folks are saying that you're doing pretty good with respect to the quality there. I think probably the most important slide for this is I always focus a bit more on the people. Products and services come and go. Reliability can be literally impacted and changed by the weather. But how well we treat our people internally as well as how they treat our external customers is always most important. When folks are having an interaction with any one of these three employee groups on the cable side, whether it's customer service, help desk, or field service employees, we see all of those numbers high 80s and even into the mid 90s. We do expect to see field service reps a little bit higher than customer service because they are the guys and gals that are coming out and actually fixing the problem or getting that service back up and running either for the first time or again. But across the board, really strong numbers here for the reps. So please pass that along to them. We did present to some of them today, so I passed that message along, but really good numbers here. How important are live sports on major broadcast networks such as ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC? And we see right around 3/5 or 2/3 of folks saying very or somewhat important. We have some non-sports fans in the not at all important category from 2017 and 2019 by phone, but largely speaking, again, utilizing this information as leverage during your negotiations is a tool that you can use. In this particular case, these networks, folks are saying they're important. When we get into some of the future slides, we'll show you a little different scenario. We then wanted to walk folks through kind of the basic cable package and let them know, based on industry trends, that these 4 channels were going to be seeing some increases. So this is an opportunity through survey research. Not only do you get to capture some of kind of the tipping points for folks in terms of price sensitivity, but you also get to educate them a little bit as well. So the way in which the question was read or presented online was, today the basic cable package includes $14 per month to carry these 4 channels. This will increase to nearly $16 per month in 2020 and $20 per month in 2021. However, these channels are free if you have an antenna. SELCO will be renegotiating with many of the local broadcasters at the end of 2020. The cable industry is anticipating steep increases from these broadcasters. So if you remember earlier on in the slides, you got high ratings for honesty and integrity. This is just letting them know what's coming. Here's what we're dealing with. Here are the choices that we have to make. We saw that when they understood that information, the $14 to $16 price difference wasn't too big of a factor. When it got from 16 to 20, we saw 38.7% suggest they would be likely to cancel their subscription if that change occurred. Now, before everybody gets nervous, what we see in these is folks are a little more aggressive in the survey response to these questions than they are in terms of the action. Either way, if you take 38% and even say half of these folks are just reacting, 20% of likelihood to cancel, still a number, right? So education, letting folks know, retooling some of the packages, perhaps some value adds, those sorts of things. What we see, and I know there's no annual contracts with respect to your cable service, one thing that we do see with some of the folks that have those contract periods is that when they proactively communicate prior to the contract period being up, being more proactive, hey look, you're coming up on the end of your contract, we'd like to offer you a new package. Very similar to what the cell phone services are doing. You can have a new phone, but we want to lock you in for another 2 years. Now again, knowing you don't have contracts, how can we be creative and let folks know that we're thinking about them and being proactive, rather than just waiting for the increase to take place and passing that along. If there's things that you can do to communicate or help them think about the packages in a different way, that's something that can go a long way, or perhaps help mitigate or reduce the number of folks that are thinking in that capacity. Here was the other side of these 2 channels. So HDH and LVI, we asked about their importance. Again, kind of similar to some price increases. We saw that folks were less likely to say that these 2 channels were important versus them not being that important, and I believe that it was utilized in negotiation, and you were able to negotiate a better rate by having this data. So hopefully that paid for the survey, and the ROI is there for you, but this is an opportunity where you can utilize this data for leverage. So we were happy to hear that that was utilized in that way. Customers do prefer keeping NFL Network, so there's 4 different kind of channels or tiers that were up for negotiation in the next 2 years, and again, this was kind of proactively talking to your customers and seeing where the real value from them, from their words in terms of these 4 different channels. NFL Network becoming the highest, HD Net, Outdoor Channel, and Access followed. Most would switch, so we asked if you were to cancel your Selco cable subscription, which of the following options would you pursue? Watch broadcast via antenna and over-the-top programming like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, HBO Now, Sling, YouTube TV, and Disney Plus. That's where the greatest bulk of folks move to. Cancel cable and switch to an antenna to get the same channels for free. A much smaller number, and an even smaller number switching to satellite TV. So again, it's understanding how your customers are thinking so that you can be forward thinking with how you want to handle different changes in the industry and evolutions. We also wanted to know, how often do you use Selco's Watch TV Anywhere streaming service for watching movies, primetime television shows, and or other entertainment? We did remove those folks who said never and ran the data that way. The number of folks who are saying more than 10 times per month, those are some big numbers, and this makes sense, right? When you start to think about, I use the example today of within fantasy football, you can be watching, it says watch live now. Click on that, plug in your cable subscriber, now you're watching it on your phone from the road. So these are things that more and more folks, it's becoming easier to use. Folks are taking advantage of these types of services and watching more of their content from different devices. So I would expect these numbers to continue to increase. Internet speeds, I've never seen a year where internet speeds were not a priority, even going back to the cable modem days. So same, we wanted to find out from folks if Selco were to offer fiber to the home for an additional cost of $5 to $10 per month, how likely would they be to subscribe? And again, you can see 2/5 to half to 3/5 of folks saying that they would be likely to pay that increased rate. So when you get into more of these streaming services, and I'm preaching to the choir here, having that internet speed capability, having that clear download and upload, and getting good speeds with multiple devices and downloads happening in a home, it's important folks understand that. And again, we didn't want to just say our speeds are important, we wanted to apply some price tags to it so folks could react appropriately. And those price tags of $5 and $10 respectively to increase speeds weren't scary. 49% willing to pay more for faster internet upload speeds. 41.4% feel enhanced internet speeds are more important than the actual enhanced video products. Couple more slides. Some would subscribe to app-based TV products. If they were to switch from a traditional cable TV package with set-top boxes to an app-based service, many suggest they would continue to subscribe to your television product. Some would move to a straight streaming service or dish. Again, you see the bigger number of folks staying true and loyal to Selco, again, based on the service delivery that you've given to them for many, many years. No surprise here, this is just a breakdown of who's subscribing to what. Again, this I show as more of an opportunity. If you want to see some data broken down in different ways, these might be some groups that you might want to take a look at.
Can you just go back?
Yeah.
That, so Disney Plus was launching around the same time, so we didn't really capture
Correct.
Yeah, it didn't exist yet when we
Yeah.
ran the survey.
Okay.
If you were to ask that today, it would definitely show up. They've been having tremendous success. I don't know what the numbers are, but I hear lots of folks talking about it. So even though some folks said, 38.7% said previously that if those things went up, they would cancel. If folks were planning to cancel their cable television in the next 12 months, very small numbers, 11.5% when you combine the phone and online folks. Please tell me why. Too expensive, rates rising, don't have cable, canceled it, doesn't watch much TV, so viewership going down. You do have some significant numbers of folks in that don't know category, so while you have a small number that say, yes, I am canceling, there are folks that are on the fence, so anytime we can share with them the quality and the reliability and what's new and exciting coming down the road is valuable.
Just a question on that.
Head back.
Yeah, I think that trends with about what we've been losing in
Okay.
the last 3 or 4 years, so.
Yeah, I was kind of where I was going. Did we do this question before, or in this case we haven't? Or was there a way to know?
From previous studies,
Yeah.
I can double check that and get back to you.
Because it'd be interesting to test so that if it's a guessing mechanism for us, or if it's just a,
I think I have it in my office.
yeah, interesting.
If you want me to grab it.
It's just it's questions whether it's a good measure for us to understand and do
Yeah.
projections in a different way.
Yeah, I think I think the answer is yes, for sure. Again, with these and asking the questions in the right way, I tend to spend a little bit more, I give a little more priority to the phone, again, because
Yeah.
we're determining the random sample there, but they're close enough where I think it's a good gauge, and if to your point, Mike, it's aligned with what you've kind of been seeing, I think it is a good gauge.
That's a slightly bit higher, I think, but not much.
Okay.
A few percentage. Maybe.
I would say in that particular case, keep in mind, at this point in the survey, we've now addressed a couple of price increase scenarios. We've made them aware of. We've talked about some different programming and different services and that sort of stuff. So now we've got them honed in a little bit on pricing, so that could have a couple of percentage tick incorporated into that. Interest in combining TV and streaming services. So these slides here, or these charts here, we have asked before. We double checked the data on this earlier, and all of these interest levels did go up. If they would consider keeping their existing service, if SELCO offered features that allowed them to do the following. The biggest was combine all the TV and streaming service providers in one place, but interest in all three of those categories. Making it easier to find content you want to watch through program recommendations, and then also record and watch shows on mobile devices. So just to kind of wrap it up from the electric side, again, leveraging community ownership of utility and rate communications. You're doing a great job of this. Continue to do it. Don't let off the throttle. We want to continue to make sure that folks understand that you're a municipally owned electric utility and what the benefits are that come along with that. That the money is remaining local and that you're being serviced by local folks. Educating customers on the value of electric vehicles. Again, there seems to be some market out there. If that's something that is of interest to you and you have some scenarios where you can help folks in that process, there's certainly opportunity to do so. The time of use rates to customer, I think we talked a little bit about that. Again, if this is something that you're heading down the road, some of that pre-education and giving them the opportunity to see if they would benefit from it along the way. Again, I understand the need for meters and all that sort of stuff, but it's a path that you're heading down. Those are two areas that can really help you save some troubles along the way.
We need the meters first.
Yeah.
So probably 3 years away from even
Okay.
considering that.
But this data, I think, supports that this community is open to and willing to engage in that kind of scenario. Evaluating the methods for increasing value of Watch TV Everywhere service. I think we've already talked about that. Pairing cable subscription with streaming services. Again, I won't read all these to you. Prioritizing the maintenance of basic cable channels and upcoming negotiations. That is keeping them up to speed with what's going on, clearly communicating what you're dealing with and what you're trying to do on their behalf. And then also promote the value of fiber to the home. There's some opportunity there to earn some extra dollars, but also provide a service that folks are looking for anyway. So that being said, we always leave our contact information. You can contact anybody on our team if you have additional questions. There's no cost for doing so. Our cost is an all-inclusive model for you, so if you need additional data runs, presentations, you have questions, we welcome them. Give us a call anytime. We'd be happy to chat with you.
Mike? One quick question. You gave us a general sense as to where we are vis-a-vis investor-owned utilities, but I think you do a number of Massachusetts municipal electric utilities, and how do we compare to them in terms of, the first couple slides?
Yeah, so on the electric side, so not everybody has the cable, so I'll go to the electric side on that. We've conducted, I think, the last go around, and we just did a comparison chart in December. I think there was 12
There's 12 in there.
12 utilities based in there, and SELCO was coming in the top 2 or 3. Keeping in mind, that throughout Massachusetts, we routinely see the mid to high 80s and low 90s. So I think there's only about a 5 or 6 percentage point spread from the lowest to the top. So everybody's doing a pretty good job, but of those 12, you're even at the top, 3, 4 or so. But I can resend that chart to Jackie so that you can see it side by side. But again, these are numbers to be really, really proud of. They're very good. I don't always get to present good news like this, so I enjoy it when I get to do that because the staff here are doing a great job on both sides.
I was a little surprised by the stat, which like 56% or whatever only knew that we were the lowest rate or so. Because I think we're third or fourth lowest in the state. Right?
Well, that was on the cable.
Was that?
Was
No,
it?
I thought.
No, that was on the electric.
Yeah, and yet I thought the newsletter only last month, so probably.
It says that
It's in
all
there
the time.
every
Yeah,
single
it says
month,
it every
yeah.
month,
And so I'm wondering about presentation, and I see it and it makes sense to me. It's a little bar
A
graph,
lot
but
of
maybe
people
it's,
don't even open the bill anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
They
no.
send it for auto pay or they
Yeah.
pay it online, and when you're paying it online, even though there's a link to the newsletter,
Yeah.
how many people are clicking it? They're just going
Yeah.
and paying the bill.
I just wonder if on our website, we could say third lowest in the state or something where we promote it a
We
little
might be
more.
able to do that.
I
I
would-
believe the chart is right on the homepage of our website too, the same chart that's on the newsletter, but I don't know
guess-
how many people
I don't know
go
who
to our
looks at
website
that,
on a
yeah.
regular basis.
Here's-
You really only go there if you've got
Yeah.
something
I
you're
haven't
looking
been on
for,
your
trying to
website,
do.
yeah.
Right, maybe social media might be a more effective way, we're hitting
Yeah.
more proactively, because then we're
Yeah.
hitting them versus them having to come to our website.
Yeah, I
So that
think
might be a
so.
good,
Yeah.
might be a good approach.
And a different way of presentation, because not everyone is a
Yeah,
bar
not a
graph
chart, yeah.
oriented, and so you see, some people see a chart and they freak out.
Right.
So a
Yeah.
different way of saying, because I think that's something to promote. I mean, do you people should at least know about it.
Yeah.
You have that sense. Because if I'm gonna get an electric car, or I'm gonna get
Yeah, you wanna
solar,
know it's low,
I also wanna know I'm in the lowest, if I'm gonna buy a house, I wanna know that I'm in the lowest, rate, so among the lowest, so these are all.
So I
important
think
things.
if you were so a lot of that kind of concept falls into what my expectations are, how well I feel you're doing, therefore how much emphasis or attention I want to pay to it. I'm getting good service from you, you're reliable, I feel comfortable paying what I'm paying. The bill, when I look at the bottom number, whether I know how it's comprised or not, when I look at that bottom line number, it doesn't shock me or
Seems
make me
reasonable,
upset, seems
right.
reasonable. And so I don't have to give you all a whole lot of thought. And so from that perspective, if I looked at that bottom line number and felt that it was high, now I'm going to give it some thought, and then that's where that communication is more important. I think the fact that it is in every bill and every newsletter that you're talking about, you're not hiding behind it, and you are doing what you can to promote it. I think it's really just a factor of it's not on their
Not a
radar,
priority to people.
not a priority right now because they feel pretty good about where you're at
Mhm.
there.
Makes sense.
But I think the fact that you have it out there is really good, so that if it does change, you're there, you're being open and honest and transparent about it.
Any other questions, Mike, or on the report, comments?
Yeah, that's good.
No, very good news.
No, and again, we do this every 2 years, and this is the first time we've separated the two because I thought people were getting confused when we had one survey of 70-plus questions on electric and cable. They were overlapping the services on some of the questions, so we did segregate them this time, and I can't preach enough how important customer service is to me because I feel that, well, we can't compete with IOUs or privately run cable companies on some of the bells and whistles. We can beat them on customer service, and so that's where we're always looking for a
Mhm.
competitive advantage.
And these are different participants, right, on the cable and electric side? You have
Yes,
like a class 400 calls, not 200,
Correct.
for instance.
What's your dropout rate at 55 questions?
You know what? Honestly, believe it or not, it's on the phone side. It's about every 35 dials lead to a completed phone survey. It used to be 15 to 17 dials led to a completed survey. So what we find is it depend. So to answer your question, the dropout rate changes based on how many questions you get in. The dropout rate goes way down once we get past the first 4 questions. Because if we can explain to them very quickly, we're not selling you anything, we're calling on behalf of your local provider, we want to get your opinion on how well they're doing, that's their opportunity to say, you know what, okay, I'm going to take that. So, and our call center representatives, and our call center is right in our office, in our home office in Glastonbury, so our call center reps are about 60 feet from my desk. we can listen in and watch what they're doing at all times. If they come to apply for a job with us and they have telemarketing experience, we say thank you and we politely show them the door. Because it's not uncommon where I walk into a room like this and somebody says, a commissioner says, I got a phone call from one of your reps. I said, please tell the room how they did, and they say they were polite and they were nice. So I always refer to them as my little mini conversation specialists, and that's their job, is because my folks are an extension of you when we're on the phone, so we take that really seriously. And so they have fun. The amount of laughing that actually goes on during these calls, you'd be shocked. Because this group of folks is very busy, and usually the common consensus is, I'm not taking that survey, but your customers do. It's their opportunity. Because they're not thinking about you, to that earlier point, when they do have the opportunity to praise you, they will take that. Or if they had an issue with you, they'll take the opportunity, but they'll be fair as well. So they won't knock you on all 50 questions to get to the one that they're unhappy about. They'll knock you on that one.
Definitely was a random, because I got called,
Did you?
and I said, yeah.
How did it
sure,
go?
It was good.
Yeah, see?
But halfway through, I'm going, oh my God, this thing is long. You know what's going on?
Are you
But
electric?
it was very pleasant
Yeah,
experience.
we
It
can,
was good.
we
I
can
got
look
called
into
on the
You
cable
did,
side.
yeah.
not
I got
that
called and I
bad.
told them I couldn't take the good
You wrote,
conscience.
you helped wrote
I'm
it.
like,
You helped write it.
Well, I didn't know their questions, so I was fine.
Good.
Was there a demographic skew?
Yeah, we do have that all. Not a skew. It's pretty proportional. You have a tendency to weigh a little heavier on the kind of plus 50 side. That's pretty true. But part of including the online as a second methodology is incorporating more of those younger folks. So we get a good mix.
Yeah, the phone side was an older
Yeah, older
demographic.
Would
people,
assume
right.
that, yeah.
But it is your customers, so we're calling from your list. So it's a good random sampling of your
Yeah.
customers.
And we
And
have
you
some
also-
cell phones in our database, so
Oh,
it's not
good.
just landline
Yeah.
customers.
And the thing to remember too, when you're looking at the actual raw percentages of age categories, keep in mind they're percentages of all those folks 18 and over and heads of household. So you're, the 25 and 26-year-olds that are still living at home, that survey is being answered by their parents. So as your customers, with the number of younger folks living at home longer and longer, it's kind of the nature of who the bill payer is in many cases as well.
Did you randomize across the whole customer base, or use the active user base that actually is called into the service center?
So
So we gave a full dump of our electric database and of the cable database, so that they took, I don't know the exact methodology Seamus used when he put it together, but he tried to take some customers who had electric only, some customers who had cable only, and some customers who had both services, and then he randomized the selections for each of the surveys to get a fair representation,
Okay.
so that it wasn't too far one way or the other.
Are you able to tag people who actually call for customer service?
No, we don't have that flag in the system to report by.
However, if you do have that flag in the system in the future, we can also incorporate that. We do that a lot on the electric side if folks have been a part of collections or if they participated in programs. All that data we can actually import behind the scenes, and we're a HIPAA compliant firm, so we take the data cleanliness and security very seriously.
And on top of surveys, Jackie, you can explain what we also do on service calls. Our customer service reps follow up with the customer within a day to see how it went.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, on every single install, we do a call back the next day. And that way, if anything did go wrong, we have that touch point to say, oh, well, if it's not working, let's send somebody back out, or, oh, thank you for that input, Joe did a great job.
Should team up with the Domino's folks, where
Yeah.
if they have the issue of the missed sauce, they bring the free pizza, maybe you can.
Everyone gets free pizza.
Yeah.
Every install, free pizza.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very
Mike.
much.
Thanks so much.
I'll take just a minute to kind of power everything down here. Do you want me to just shut this TV off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. We'll see you in 2 years.
Sounds good.
The next thing on the schedule is the bill schedule, so we'll pass those around for signature. We'll go on to the next matter, which is review and consider for approval the minutes from November 25th, 2019.
Is this you?
That's mine. You can borrow it if you want.
Very cute. I want one.
You can have it.
No,
After
I'm not
the
gonna
meeting.
take your purple pen.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much.
Mike.
Good job.
Thanks, Mike.
You're very welcome. Have a good day. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
So are there any comments to the November 25 minutes? I had none. Anyone else?
I was good with it.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No against? Unanimous approval. The next is to go through and review and approve minutes of December 2nd, 2019.
These minutes were a little more difficult to write because the tape recorder wasn't working.
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
that stinks.
But we think we captured it through my notes
Yeah.
and what Kathy
We've been pretty basic lately.
Yeah.
Oh,
We doing this way?
oh, sorry.
What, nothing?
Yeah, you got I'll be the last.
Any comments to the minutes?
No.
No.
I had none as well. Motion to approve,
So moved.
second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Next matter is, Mike, if you go over the electric December 2019 cash statements.
This is pretty much the year-end statement.
Yeah.
Cash receipts for the year of 39.5 mil are 9% greater than 2018, about 7% ahead of budget. Revenue receipts were even with last year at 3.5% and 3.5% more than budget. Cash expenditures totaled 37.1 mil. They were even with 2018 and 3.5% less than budget projection. That left total available funds at the end of the year of 15.6 million. And that balance is 24% more than 2018 and 33% ahead of projection.
Questions on electric?
No.
No.
It's good.
I'm good.
All right, motion to approve.
So moved.
Tony, second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Take this now.
All in favor?
Aye.
I agree, so approved. Next, Mike, review and consider the cable TV December 2019 cash statements.
Year-end 2019, cable cash receipts were $21.6 million. That was about 6% greater than 2018 and a percentage point below forecasts. Largely due to the February, primarily due to the February 2019 rate increases. Expenditures of 16.5 mil were 4% greater than 2018 and 3% lower for the same period in budgeted expenses. We're talking with about other planned investment, the ISP and digital upgrade expenditures running about $275,000 less than 2018 and $336,000 under budget. Significant expenditures include about $146,000 for inventory, $276,000 for head-end and digital equipment. The total available funds on 12/31/2019 total $26.8 million. That balance is about 40% better than 2018 and 3% better than forecast.
Any questions for Mike?
Will that change anything about what we're gonna borrow when we start doing the fire?
It could be, Tony, when we get to that point. My goal is to make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen in 2 weeks from tomorrow, and we'll talk about that, but Right now, I was thinking a 15-15 split, maybe we'd go 18-12, borrow 12 instead of, but you can always ask for
Sure.
authorization, then you don't have to
You
go
don't have to
back.
borrow it all, that's
Yeah.
right.
Our request will be to get on the annual town meeting warrant to authorize the town meeting to allow us to borrow up to a certain amount for cable system improvements.
So it would be May,
May, yes.
and then how long do we think, when would we think about doing the borrowing, and what's up
I would think we'd be
timeline?
borrowing for a couple of years, Mike.
Alright.
We'd use our cash first and then
And then
borrow
might-
to finish.
the authorization is kind of like evergreen, or does it
Yes.
just stay out?
It's evergreen.
Okay.
Now, once you borrow, you have to use the funds within a
Right.
certain period of time, or you're subjected to arbitrage penalties.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike? Mike or Mike?
No, but on the schedules, I noticed the wreaths and the tree and all that, do we pay for all of that for the town?
We do.
We do, yeah.
We have historically paid
Yeah,
for
that's what I
that.
thought.
Yes. Yep.
Any other questions? Motion to approve the cable TV cash statements.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you, Mike. Next up is operating brief, Mike Hill.
And I'll be brief, but,
Brief.
on the, the statistical first page, it's the first time in my memory, where the internet subs have decreased from the previous month.
Really?
So I think some of that might be attributed to, snowbirds, going to Florida, but we're gonna monitor that and I'll keep you posted on that. But that was a little
Can you?
unusual statistic. On the wireless router service, we continue to go up. Again, the goal is to be at 25% of our customer base by the end of 2023. We're pretty much on schedule for that. Getting further into the brief, we did settle a contract with WHDH and WLVI with a very minor increase, and we also, through our partners with the NCTC, who is negotiates the majority of our bundled programming with the cable conglomerates, they settled the contract with Fox at 11:42 p.m. on December 31st, 18 minutes
That's
before.
miserable.
So, and that contract was settled for prices at or slightly higher than what we had anticipated, so it went down to the mat. One thing that Fox was really pushing for was the inclusion of the Big Ten channel, and we will not be required to cover the Big Ten channel, so.
Is
I don't know if that
football or
upsets you
something?
Midwestern
That's
people.
sport,
Yeah, football and
Big Ten.
basketball
Oh,
sport.
oh, I see.
Yeah, so, we had it at one point, we were able to drop it like 5 years ago, because our statistics showed that there wasn't a lot of viewership, but we were required to carry it. We do owe you a transparency statement, that is a requirement that we need to have. And we're working on the language with both internal staff and our attorney in Washington DC, and that's on the cable side.
Can you explain what that is, just briefly?
So it kind of tells the customer, we don't throttle, or we don't snoop, we don't do things, we don't sell our data to marketers or things. Some operators mine the data and sell it all to, that's not what we do, so we're just fine tuning that, and we will have that out for you, for your review at the February meeting. Just anecdotally, it's come back into our review. I don't know where we're gonna go with it, but we have data caps right now for residential customers that they can use up to 600 gigabytes per month. We're thinking of increasing that to a terabyte, but we don't really enforce it, and we don't have a penalty clause because not much of the industry is there.
Right.
But in the month of December, we had one residential customer that used 30 terabytes
Wow.
in a month. So it's like
Oh, come on.
50 times greater than what's allowed.
Making Bitcoin?
So we don't look at what they're doing, so it's not our thing to, but that data is shared with the other people on the nodes,
Right.
so it creates a problem.
Have you had any
We have
complaints?
to either come up,
Is a phone call appropriate and inquiry?
yeah, we're
or-
going to look into that, but we gotta figure out we're hoping it's not some type of hacked or bug in there.
That's what you wanna know too.
Yeah.
And is it a one-off, like that was just that
Right.
month, or it's a continual?
It's been pretty steady since October, but December was the most. No one's ever seen something like that high. Even our Canadian operator that oversees our networks hasn't seen that kind of traffic. So, and it's all downloading, so it's not uploading of
I love to
files.
hear the story.
Yeah, but again, we don't.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so we will continue to look at that and really, a lot of cable operators, especially on the private side, they do charge, probably $10 for every 50 gig you go over. But you
Make
still,
some money with
all
it.
you're doing is getting a little extra money and you still have the problem.
Still, yeah, you still got.
You still
Yeah,
have the constrained network, so it
Yeah.
doesn't really.
Although arguably the extra costs would deter the behavior,
Or
that's
the
the
extra
logic.
cost could be used to,
expand them.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if that would happen.
Yeah.
How many terabytes?
30.
30 terabytes.
So
One
at your
terabyte per
pricing,
day.
at your pricing of $10 per 50, what's that?
Well, I haven't done that, Mike, because most of them that I've researched, they charge $10 per 50 gigabytes up to 2 terabytes, and then it's unlimited free after that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so.
Hmm.
There's no one that has,
No
you
one
keep
does that.
paying for consumption like a cellular plan.
Hmm.
But we don't enforce that, but, we don't know, as this world, this spins so fast, the the bandwidth issues, so it's something that we're or Joelle is monitoring closely. So we'll have that for you next week. And I just point out on Joelle's behalf, who had intended to be here tonight, but not feeling well, that, and Mike, you can weigh in on this, but we showed you a couple photos of improvements we made at the service area to build I wouldn't call it state-of-the-art, but light years ahead inventory control room for cable. And the auditors were here last week, Mike,
Mm-hmm.
and they were very impressed.
Excellent.
So
good.
we'll
That's
tick
good.
that,
Right,
tick
right.
that one off. And that's all I really had on the operating brief.
Any questions for Mike on the operating brief?
No, thank you.
The windstorms and things we had a little while ago didn't affect us too much.
John, how about those winds?
How about those winds?
We had a couple little issues that came up,
Did you?
but
Yeah.
everything was resolved.
Oh, good.
Next spot says correspondence. Did we receive any correspondence that we need to discuss?
No.
Okay. Move on. Other business? Any other business?
I have none other than I would request an executive session for the purposes of discussing the value of real property.
Okay.
All right. We'd like to enter into executive session under General Law 30, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6 to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property. Are we going back into open session, or is it closed?
I don't see a need to.
Okay,
We got
so,
our next meeting, do we have that set?
I think it's
Yeah,
February 24th.
Right.
we need a roll call vote. Tony,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Yes as well. All right, we are adjourning this meeting, I guess, at
At 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, and we are going into executive session. Thank you.
Okay.